This is not exactly a talk. We will be having a panel session, and I just want to introduce you to the panel leader who is here, Antonios, I'm going to try this again, Triantafyllakis.
I was surprised.
Triantafyllakis? Huh?
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one is right. I've introduced a couple of Greek last names before, so I have a little bit of experience, who is a soft skills trainer, facilitator, and consultant who combines the experiential learning with gamification to ensure a holistic, playful, and impactful approach to capacity building, adaptable to your needs. So, interesting. He believes in a world of equal rights and opportunities where young people are active global citizens that embrace diversity and empathy and are ready to build an innovative, inclusive, and sustainable future today. And he created my trainer to put that dream into practice. So I leave you with the panel leader, Antonios, and the rest of the panel. Round of applause, please.
Yay! All right, thank you very much for the introduction. You could also read the same description on the schedule. I have to say that most of my experience is in the youth sector. I've been working with the NGOs for the past 15 years or so, and I came to Germany to try to make a sort of a combination with public, with NGO and the private sector. So I'm in that transition process. And what I came to realize is that we perfectly complement the topic of the panel with the other panelists, because we have me coming from the youth sector, we have Lutz from the private sector, and we have the doctor from the public sector. So it's an amazing, amazing combination that we have here.
It's too small, by the way, here. So
and now this works as well. Okay. So everybody's got a microphone. I will also let the speakers to introduce themselves, but I will give it a try to pronounce their names. To my left, we have Lutz Leichsenring. Yes. Who is a doctor working for the Young Targets. Lutz, if you would very shortly present Young Targets and one fun fact about yourself.
All right, so starting with Young Targets, we are since 2007 in gamification in HR. So we are trying to develop methodologies and gamification modules to hire people for our clients. We work for 200 companies, mostly from the tech sector, and we focus on young talents, on students, on graduates and young professionals. And we started with easy way of reinventing job fairs and just turning it around and let the company applying to the talents. We hired a shuttle and drove them through the city, and they could look behind the scenes. And nowadays we also develop escape games and all kind of tools like that.
Perfect.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
Fun fact, I'm also the spokesman of the Berlin Club Commission, which is representing the club culture of Berlin. And because I also ran a club for 10 years, that's my fun fact for today.
That's pretty fun. And we have Dr. Philipp Busch. If you also could introduce yourself and fun fact.
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Philipp. I hope this works with the microphone because it doesn't really fit on. Perhaps let's start with the fun fact, because in conference I'm getting always asked this question, so I will tell it right away. I'm 2 meters 5. So if anybody is asking it.
Okay, save some time.
Yeah. For the professional experience, I work now for over 5 years for GIZ, which is the German Development Corporation, which is closely linked to the German government and the ministry called BMZ. And we are doing a lot of projects all over the world in over 130 countries, different sectors. So quite big company with over 20,000 people working for it. And now in the last 5 years, we also tried to implement gamification and serious games to this field of development cooperation, and started really slowly and now progressing.
Perfect. Now, the topic of this session, apart from my voice being too loud for this microphone, is if gamification is just a buzzword or if it is a game changer. So let's see what your input on that can be. Let's start with you, Lutz, and I would like to ask it more directly. What is the biggest misconception that you've encountered regarding gamification in your sector?
Well, in my sector, I'm dealing with HR, and HR is not known for being the most innovative department in the company, usually. It changed, though. It changed a lot, to be honest, because all the challenges companies are facing are somehow conglomerated in the HR. So they have to change a lot, and to be in that field is very challenging when it comes to digitalization, when it comes to also work on the retention of their staff, but also to attract people, especially young talents who can work remotely from all over the world. And now you have to attract them to work in your company for a long time. And by using gamification elements, we kind of give them already an insight in what they can expect in the companies. We get them in touch with potential coworkers. We get them into touch with learning experience about the branch, and we can also challenge them in what they're doing. And that is pretty new. Before that, probably everybody knows how HR works. You have job fairs, you have your CVs you send in, and I think that is something which actually is a very positive change in Germany. That more and more companies now work with really like life experiences and gamification elements.
If I may comment on that, I've noticed that mostly when people talk about gamification, especially in the private sector, they tend to focus on software, and that includes the field of HR. So can you give any different approach to make it clear to more people how to not use, what can you do with gamification outside of software in order to improve HR?
I think the magic happens in the combination if you do it hybridly. So, of course, in all your marketing approach and employer branding approach, you should switch to digital because the analog is just not as efficient. But when it comes to how to really get in touch with people and being also a human behind the company, behind the employer brand, I think it's even a turn back from digital to analog, because companies have to find ways to also differ from each other, and the personal experience, the getting to know somebody, and also to have a good feeling about this job, I think is very much connected to personal experience.
So switching to the human factor, let's see what comes from the public sector. Philipp.
Yes, so I think like a few years ago I faced the same problem that almost every second person in this room already faced, the word gamification. And to convince a conservative person of the topic of gamification. At the first hand, it's always when it's connected to business and to real money, then it's always, there's the gaming sector and the gaming market, and it's growing, and we see that, but we're not playing games, we are doing serious stuff, right? And this was also a problem that we faced a few years ago. So a few years ago, 5 years ago to be specific, we did first projects in gamification. For instance, there we started with a hackathon in Ethiopia, where we invited different people from all over Africa to work on different problems in the African continent, for instance, tribalism in Kenya. And we started with this project, and it went out to be a super good success due to a lot of good colleagues that we had, and we had a lot of luck on this as well. But this was like the first showcase that we could show also to the ministry. Okay, guys, this works. Basically, here we have some proof. And then they started to try to be open for it a little bit. And then we continued with we used a lot of digital learning, MOOCs, and all these web-based trainings and stuff like this, also to reach out to all the people in the developing countries. And we started to gamify it. We did a lot of mistakes, we did some good stuff. I will talk about this also tomorrow, but just to give you an overview how this evolved. And right now, like in the recent or in the past 2 years, it's really getting an accepted thing, right? So right now, if you say, yes, we are doing a gamification project, that's something good that you do, you know, like that's a positive thing. But it took us 5 years to do this transformation right now. And I think right now we're in a super good time right now, because now, at least for the public sector, because now we have some results. We can show that it works. This concept, different approaches, and yeah, people are aware of this word and want to try it out.
If you could mention like the most distinctive feature of gamification that convinced stakeholders in the public sector to take gamification seriously, what would that be?
We did always some videos of our sessions, you know, of the hackathons and also the gameplay stuff and that. And we always included a lot of people that are normally in different ethnic groups, basically, you know. And sometimes there were a lot of tensions between those ethnic groups, but as we can show with this gameful approaches and the magic circle that you're putting your participants in when you're using gamification, that this connects, and this goes over the border of the tensions of ethnic groups. That was something that really convinced the people over there, and that we had some really outcomes, some real results on it.
It seems gamification is on the right track then, because we are in the 21st century, and that work, whether it is in the public sector or the private sector or the youth sector, it has to include more digitalization, it has to include more cultures in the same space. So I think in all three examples, we can find positive impact from gamification in that direction. Yeah?
Yeah, we like to talk about basically 3 dimensions we want to have in our approach. It's the factor of learning, the learning factor, the connect factor, and the chill factor. So why learning and connecting is clear. I mean, it's about learning more about the branch and about the topics, but also connecting to the right people, like maybe the specialists and not the HR person, you know, the people who are talking about the technical issues. But the chill factor is an element which only works if you have the other ones in place. So to participate at a recruiting event, we call it recruitainment. If you participate and you would only be entertained, would not be enough. And if you only have a job fair and you can change your business card, would not be enough. And if you're only sitting there at conference and learning, but you're not getting to know anybody from the company, would also be not enough. So the combination of these three factors is basically the game changer.
Okay, then that gives me a good push to mention the point that I wanted to make, which is sort of different, sort of the same in the youth sector. On the one hand, you mentioned the chill factor and how that cannot attract the right type of working mentality, let's say, to stay in a company. We're facing the same in youth NGOs. The usual approach is, let's present it as parties and having fun and whatever to get more members, and then we'll activate them. That creates a false narrative of basically you're giving an expectation, you're fulfilling that expectation, not the one you actually wanted. So that makes the recruitment difficult in the NGO sector, which is mainly focused on intrinsic motivation, because you're joining to do something, some kind of change in the world. You're not joining to get money out of it. So you see the same problem following different types of motivations. And what you mentioned before was the opposite of what I observed when it comes to the perception of gamification. You struggle to convince stakeholders in the public sector that it's not just playing games, it's more serious. I struggle with the opposite. Because the most common misconception I found in the youth sector is that gamification is about playing games, and we should do that. We should play more games, which is not a fault on its own, but gamification, and that I consider the biggest misconception about it, is a lot more than just using games. It has to do with realizing how psychology works and utilizing that to engage the users the same way games do, not to use games as they are.
Definitely, yeah. And also, because if you ask, there are only good things on gamification that are happening. I also have another example that we're facing right now in Egypt, for instance. There we're working on there are a lot of Egyptians here, woo, by the way. Yes. No, there we're working in the labor market, and especially with a focus on the blue-collar labor, so industrial workers and stuff like this. And there we wanted to improve their work situation in the printing sector. So right now we're doing a gamified system that we lay over their work environment, and what it turned out, because we work super close with the management, of course, together, because they are the ones implementing it, that they always use gamification as a monitoring system, right? And that it's kind of an electronical whip, so if you're not coming in time, you're getting minus points. And if you're, not cleaning up your stuff, you get this. And I can see your data, and I'm the big brother watching you, yeah? And this is something, of course, you have to be super careful with it, especially when it comes to this extrinsic reward system, right? So yeah, we are all here kind of gamifiers and a lot of experts here, but always be super careful with the extrinsic rewards. These are super helpful for the beginning of a process, and we are also using them in this system right now because it is helpful for the beginning and for the onboarding, but afterwards then you have to find some space, if possible, like the highest, I would say, step or perspective that you can have is that your user become creative on their own. So if you have the possibility to have like a space for creativity within your gamified system, then you're doing a good job, because then you're transforming the extrinsic into pure intrinsic.
Yeah, ownership.
Yeah, ownership exactly as well.
You have a point to make.
Yeah, I just can relate to this because when we do recruitment for companies, of course, it's also about authenticity. How can you really represent your company with this kind of gamification element? And maybe when you're a bank, you should not offer, let's say, a poker night, I mean, there are some things which don't make sense in how you're gonna be perceived. So we are trying to develop this together with the team. We use design thinking and interdisciplinary teams to develop that, but it's very important to have the teams on board from the very first day. So sometimes it's also get hybrid from the very beginning, because we develop some app which then lead to an event or something like that. So it's really about starting from the scratch and not coming from the outside as an agency. It's like we have the solution. It's really about but I have to say also HR also likes to have best practices. So with the very new idea, it's also not working. So you have to prove that it already worked. So it's always like balancing exactly.
Yeah, I had a question I wanted to ask to you, because I have this fear from the private sector that it's very often the case that employers, especially in high-scale companies, have this idea, especially in the HR sector, that they can trick their employees with gamification to keep being motivated without rewarding them enough, like with a proper salary or health benefits or things like that, but using gamification just to create this kind of golden prison for their employees. Is that a valid fear that they have?
I think so, but that's not very sustainable. So you will not have a long-term success with it, because people will understand this. Maybe in the beginning it's fun to try it out, but as soon as they know they are going to be exploited. So we also do hackathons, but we don't use hackathons to develop new ideas. We use it for anything they want to work on, but by doing it, they get to learn each other. And they get to learn the people from the branch as mentors, or with data they get provided. So we're not trying to force somebody into what. We're more like build platforms, and then you can use it, and you can test your skills, but also connect to people.
Okay, great. Philipp, if you want to add anything about the balance between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation in the public sector? And then we can go to the audience for questions.
Yeah.
We have 5 minutes? How much do we have? Yeah. 10. Oh, generous. We're not Germans here.
I think basically that's the point. You have to be careful where to put extrinsic rewards and where to put, or try to push for intrinsic rewards, of course, but extrinsic rewards are only for short term. They work for the onboarding, and basically they work pretty well for the onboarding if you know how to use them. But then afterwards, you should go into intrinsic motivation. And again, this is the problem if people are only using, you know, extrinsic motivations, especially for monitoring systems, right? And this is some things that you have to clarify with your customer from the very beginning, that it's not a monitoring system that helps the management team. It can also benefit the management team, of course, right? But at the end, it should be benefiting the user, the worker itself.
Okay, we can slowly switch to the, whoa, we definitely can and shall. Before I give you the floor for questions, I'd like to suggest one thing, and if you want, you follow it. Go to the application and tweet what is your aha moment from the whole day today. What is the most important, significant, impressive learning point that you had from the whole conference today? And we can start with you. My
name is Victoria, and I'm representing Denmark. I have a question about end user. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Okay. So you said, Philipp, you said that you work with the management. I'm wondering how aware are the end users, the blue collar, the workers, about the system, about the game, how educated they are in that? Yeah. I would be really interested in that.
Yeah, definitely. Great question. And there we are also using a lot of design thinking because we really want to go for this user-centered design, because you can create, especially when you work in an international corporation with different cultures and stuff like this, we could design a system that works in Germany, but if you transfer it to another culture, it doesn't work at all, you know? So we integrate and have like the end user on board from the very first moment. Depends on the project itself. Sometimes they also design the project itself with us. And if they're not in the designing team, like a blue collar, for instance, for several reasons, then we are having like iterations and test rounds always, you know? Like we're inviting blue collars to come to our place to test this system, and we are also going directly to them and have like another environment, their home environment, basically testing these different things. And they can give feedback, and it should work for them at the end. You know, if it's only work for the management team, it doesn't work. But we have to get the green lights from the management, and this is something that you also have to take into consideration while planning this project. Yes, you can also go for the perfect user-centered system that you will ever have, but if you don't have like the green lights by the management, it doesn't work either.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, this question is for So my name is Miret. I'm from the Egyptian people, by the way, and and I'm HR. And I'm not your typical HR, so don't worry about that. But I'm very curious about what you said. I was talking to Betty earlier about the survey and how to gamify the job application. So I can see that you have already managed to do something like this. So my question is, what is the methodology you did to engage applicants to come and go through the process of gamification, the job application itself? And about the job fair, did you gamify the booth of the companies, or did you like design the whole job fair to be gamified?
So the first question was how we. So first of all, I think it's relevant what your goals are. And when we talk to HR, they either are a company which is not very, where the brand is not strong enough and is not known in the target group, or it's very known but not known for that specific audience they're looking for. So if you're, I don't know, a car company and you're looking for tech people, maybe the tech people don't see themselves in that company if you're not building on your brand. And the second part is, of course, recruiting. So directly finding a person. So how we doing this is so our formats are usually not bigger than 50 to 150 people. So we really focus on the target group. We're not mixing marketing people with tech people with natural science. And for this certain group, we start a marketing campaign. And the marketing campaign is focused on the universities, around universities, online, offline. We use different gamification elements already in the marketing element. Sometimes it's about also skill testing, so that we have a kind of a selection of who is actually applying. And we can also tell the companies, if you already have a strong brand, you can pull the bar higher, and if you're not known at all, maybe you put it a bit lower. But the more people are attending, the more also there's a word of mouth, of course. When it comes to job fairs or elements we're developing, so we have about 15 formats developed now. Some of them are just used, for instance, in conferences or at fairs to get more interaction with the target group. Some of them are daily or weekend formats like a hackathon, thinkathon, or something like that. And it also focuses on a certain group. So sometimes those formats don't work for each. We have one format, it's a process optimized barbecue. So we're basically we're cooking with the target group, but we do it a la Scrum. So we use the Scrum as a methodology to develop a 3-course meal. Of course, there's a certain group which you can reach out to, mostly like male professionals in tech who like to also barbecue at home maybe. And we also have a famous cook who supports them, as well as a Scrum Master. So that's kind of one of the examples how we do it. But often it just helps to turn around the expectations. So when we just turn around the whole idea of a job fair, where you go with your application to a booth and hopefully you get a business card or a good conversation, we turn this completely around. And we have applications from companies which are handed out to the participants, and we go to the companies and and you have to go to the company. So there's like a switch, and that helps already. But as I mentioned before, we have these 3 elements, and if you have them all in place, the chill, the connect, and the learn factor, you're already set.
Cool. I think we have time for just one more question, and that's a tough choice now. Maybe 2. Where is will I get? Huh? Eeny, meeny, miny. Let's go to that side. And can you raise your hands again? Okay, let's go with you. And I need to give you a microphone. Yeah.
Hi, my question is about the intrinsic and mostly extrinsic rewards. I just heard you said that long-term intrinsic rewards are better. I agree with it. But we've noticed that we're using long-term extrinsic rewards in terms of accumulative rewards. For example, they gather more points to get bigger prizes. We've noticed that it's also very effective, but even without long-term extrinsic rewards, we noticed that people actually enjoy looking at their account with lots of accumulative points, which is actually equivalent to money. What do you think about that side on a long-term perspective from the extrinsic rewards, accumulative types?
Yeah, I think this one depends really on the setting itself, because like extrinsic rewards are always kind of distracting, because you're focusing on getting those extrinsic rewards. Yes, when you're hunting the extrinsic rewards, then you're doing the right things in the system that the system designer wants you to do, you know? But then you're somehow distracted from the activity itself. So for instance, if we think of learning, right? And we want the people to learn. And if they always only have like the extrinsic big reward at the end in mind, then they're not really focusing on the learning itself, because they always have this extrinsic reward in the back of their mind that they want to achieve, right? So definitely, yeah, extrinsic rewards can work also, especially like if it gets harder and harder and harder, right? So like that's a challenging reward system, extrinsic reward system. Yes, it works, but extrinsic rewards always, yeah, distract the people from the core activity. And I think if you can master to make the core activity enjoyable, you know, then the outcomes are way better.
I think I can add something to that may be helpful, because when I do use it, it brings amazing results in the long term. It goes back to the trap of the typical simple level of gamification, just doing PBL. And what that achieves is just making slightly more engaging the process itself. But it's missing the point when you don't have the big picture in the end. What is it that you're trying to achieve in the long term? So in this sense, one way to tackle this is to assess the values of the company, the purpose of the company, the deeper meaning of why the company does what it does and not something else. And make that known to the employees or the participants in the process, and make sure that they know how each of the tasks that they fulfill contributes to a bigger picture. So it's not just accumulating points, but it's accumulating points, sure, but I'm actually contributing to a bigger picture.
Yeah. I think it's really about, sorry to add on this again, because it's really about the right composition of extrinsic and intrinsic rewards. Yeah. And at the very beginning, people will automatically focus on extrinsic rewards because it gives them a good overview about your system and they feel comfortable if they get positive, quick feedback. But after a while, you have to really think of this right composition. It doesn't mean that at the end of your system, there shouldn't be any extrinsic rewards anymore, right?
And I think this panel is done. Yeah. But I guess we have a lot more time for discussing through dinner and all that.
Yes, indeed. But before we get into anything else, I'd like to ask for a massive round of applause for our panelists, our panel leader as well. Fantastic panel.